Hi, this is Eric Heisman with the Locked On Astros podcast, and this is my co-host Brett Chansey. We are the Locked On Astros podcast, your daily Astros podcast, and we're here to answer some questions about your Houston Astros, who are back in the playoffs after 7 straight season, and we're excited to see what they could do. Yes, it was a bumpy road, but they are here. And so, Brett, coming into the season, I know we all had expectations about what this team can do. Then we had the season, and now they're back in as AL West champions. How did your expectations change over the season, and how do you feel about them going into the playoffs?
Well, I went from thinking that at some point they would, take control of the West. Thought it'd be a lot sooner than the last game of the season. When I saw the Rangers were holding suit and then the Mariners made a late charge, you just wondered at one point, were they going to make it to the playoffs? So they secured the AL West. That was the team's goal to begin the season. And my expectations coming in were that it was that they were going to be right back in the mix and go back to a second straight World Series. And I think right now they're set up nicely to do that.
They went through a lot of trials and tribulations this year, and I think it's just going to make them that much stronger in the playoffs.
Yeah, and when we talk about the trials, Eric, the batters, the offense has been inconsistent up and down. But which batters right now going into the playoffs do you think other teams need to look at or be aware of, or other fans that are really kind of hot or have gotten hot lately as they approach the postseason?
Well, Alvarez is somebody that has 2 home runs and 2 RBIs in the last 7 games. He's batting .261 with a .911 OPS. Kyle Tucker, he missed the 30-30 season just by the triple that they ruled a home run, but then they took it away and say it was a triple again. But he's in his last 7 games, he has 1150 OPS. But somebody who's been struggling a lot recently, but once October hits, he tends to turn it on. That's Alex Bregman. He, in the last 7 days, has a home run, 2 RBIs, and he's batting .280 with 853 OPS. And Jose Abreu, somebody that has been struggling all season. He's batting .292 with 1 home run, 6 RBIs, and with a 903 OPS. So what I see is Jose Abreu becoming the Yuli Gurriel of 2023.
Wow, that's a huge order, but I think Jose Abreu is ready to do it because he talked about the champions and being part of a championship team. I think Jose Altuve stayed hot. Michael Brantley, I know, is a guy that he's healthy, and when he rolls out of bed, he can hit 300. So I'm looking forward to that.
So looking at the
Yes.
pitching depth, this is something that you had to trade some of your future prospects in order to get Justin Verlander again. The starting depth has been challenged all season. Lance McCullers out all year. Luis Garcia mostly out all year. Jose Urquidy out a lot of the year. Who do you see as in the rotation in the ALDS?
So the Astros are definitely going to go with Justin Verlander as their ace. And lately, I think he's pitched a lot better. He came over from the Mets. He dealt with an injury early on. Framber Valdez, he threw a no-hitter not even a month ago, and then most recently had one of his worst outings. You hope you get the no-hit Framber Valdez. And then Christian Javier, I think, is the third pitcher. In the ALDS, you would have Verlander, Valdez, Javier, and if they put a fourth starter in there, they could go JP France. But look, if Dusty Baker doesn't like starting a rookie, he's got Jose Urquidy, who pitched really well his last outing before the end of the regular season. So you could easily see a piggyback with France and JP. You could see a piggyback with JP France and Hunter Brown. There is a multitude of combinations, but I think your
Okay.
top 3 are Verlander, Valdez, and Javier.
Oh, by the time that game comes about, I think France, it will be like 2 weeks since he's pitched. So I think he's going to have to pitch at some point, and for him to be effective. And you mentioned Justin Verlander. In the past 2 weeks, or in the past 2 games, he's pitched 13 innings. He has 13 strikeouts, a 0.69 ERA. He's actually the AL pitcher of the week. So he's actually coming alive at the right time. Christian Javier, after struggling for most of the season, or at least the second half of the season, he's come alive too. In the last 2 games, in 10 2/3 innings, he has 10 strikeouts, 2.53 innings. So I think the bullpen is looking a lot better.
Yeah. So is the bullpen strong enough to win a World Series? Is it, because that was one of our strengths last year. Are they good enough this year?
Well, it all depends on the shoulders of Rafael Montero. I know that the Astros kind of they used him a lot last year, especially in the playoffs. he became one of their most reliable guys. And he kind of came out of nowhere. He was kind of a throw-in piece in the Kendall Graveman trade. I know the Astros went out and got Kendall Graveman, but he's not exactly the same guy this year. Ryan Presley has been good at times, bad at other times. So, but I'm not worried about Ryan Presley. Brian Abreu has shown that he could be a closer in the making. Ryan Stanek has been good at times. Phil Maton, when he's healthy, he's good. And then you have Hector Neris. He is the guy that shows all the fire. He's the guy that goes out there. If you need somebody to get out of a bases loaded situation, he may not always do it, but he does his best to do it. And Hunter Brown, he's likely out of rotation. So him and Urquidy are likely going to be in the bullpen. So I think this Astros bullpen is good enough to win the World Series, but it depends on how deep the starters go.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's going to be a huge part. And I just want to throw my 2 cents in there. Hector Neris, Brian Abreu, and Ryan Presley. I think those 3 guys are going to be the guys that really anchor this bullpen, because when all 3 of those guys are on, they are virtually unhittable.
Well, that kind of goes into my next question, Brett. What is the team's greatest strength going into ALDS?
This is going to sound cliche, but their greatest strength is their playoff experience. Because they've been so inconsistent at the plate, because their pitching has been up and down, the bottom line is no team has the amount of games and innings under their belt that this team has in the postseason. So I think their greatest strength is their experience, because when they're at home and it's a playoff game, there is a switch that is flipped. And I think you're going to see that with this team. I don't see you're going to see the home woes that you saw during the regular season. I think they're going to be the playoff Astros, and that is their greatest strength, is that they've been there and they know what the big moment's like.
And a lot of people say, well, the Astros didn't win the AL West, the Rangers lost it. And I think the converse to that is the fact it wasn't the fact that the Astros won it, but it was the fact that they had the experience to win it, and the Rangers just didn't have the ability to win it at the end. So that kind of leads into what I'm most worried about with this team, and it's what we've seen all year: the inconsistency. It's just like, can they? One day they'll get shut out, the next day they'll score 20,000 runs, and so it's just find some consistency. Justin Verlander will look great like an ace one day. Next day he'll give up 4 home runs. So it's just finding consistency. Christian Javier has been struggling with that, and you've had the whole lineup at times just looking like terrible. So just finding that consistency that will drive them to the 11 wins the Astros need.
Right. And, which leads us to the final point. How far do we think the Astros will go in the postseason? And look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think this team is still the favorite in the AL. No team wants to face this team, even the red hot Baltimore Orioles. And it doesn't mean that the Astros disrespect or take anybody lightly, because it's the playoffs. But I see them going back to the World Series. Now, whether they win it or not, that is going to be squarely on them. And if they play the Braves, it'll be a 2021 rematch. But I like our chances this year a lot more than the first time we faced them. So I see them going to the World Series. How about you, Eric?
MLB The Show had the Rangers going to the World Series and facing the Braves and beating the Braves, I think. But I think the Astros likely will go to the World Series. Can they beat the Braves? I'm not sure. The Braves are a pretty good team. They are a juggernaut. But I think that they have what it takes to get out of the American League. But it all depends on pitching, hitting, defense, all being together. They've got to find that consistency. If they can do that, no team could beat the Houston Astros. And when they're like that, that's the team we love. It's when they're struggling to get the offense and pitch good. That's when it's like, who are these guys? These guys are a little sus. But guys, that's all we got for this. Any closing thoughts, Brett?
No, I just think that once this team really shows up because they know who they are.
Right.
They know their identity. Other teams are still trying to find their identity. They know their identity. They're winners. They're champions. And until they get knocked off, they're still the champions.
All right. We are the Locked On Astros podcast. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube and make us your first listen on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, and Ghost Rose.